it's different. It's like, you know, at the local.
Some of our soul smart folks on there, and it's like
Really like it.
This-
Okay, so that means we have enough for.
yes.
It's just tons of experience, energy, which I'm still learning, you know. And so it's good. I mean, you want that change in your career. It's like, it's a little bit scary at first.
That and at least like energy is one of the things that while that is changing, I mean, the basics of it are always on the same. You're gonna need it and really change the concepts of our health.
Like, just some comfort.
Yeah, exactly.
Learn.
Yeah. It's not gonna be a moving target of learning, right?
Decided
That's true.
business wise.
Just.
So smart.
Meeting minutes first, real quick, approval, and then Soul Smart.
Mhm.
And
Roll call meeting minutes.
You know,
So it's smart.
the John Clayton.
And then what?
Too long. It's like,
and
Measuring, okay.
when you're not talking, you know, it's raised, it's revenue. And all of a sudden, you do something. I'm like, I'm so.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's why I like sometimes I just can't talk about it because I don't have the diplomacy at certain times to actually.
Patience.
Yeah, it just depends on how much sleep and coffee I've had.
That's real. This is another thing that's.
Lindsay, why don't, it looks like we have enough between on remotely and here
Okay.
to have a forum, so why don't we go ahead? We got a couple visitors, so it'll be
Yeah.
will be that first section, but we also looks like
So let's see, okay, can you guys hear us who are on the remote option?
Yes.
yep. That's Dave Sarkeesian. He's with So Smart. That's one of the first item or second item on the agenda. They'll be doing a presentation. But Richard, you're virtual as well. Can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
You and me, turn.
Okay. Turn that volume off. So we'll do a quick roll call.
Yeah, we pulled the agenda here, sorry. I was-
No worries. Actually, I was sharing that as well.
No, it's the ginger stage. Okay, all right, everybody, thanks for coming. I'm really excited. We have a great agenda today. And so we, like David said, we're going to start with a presentation from the Soul Smart folks, and that was a program we discussed last time. And then the rest of the meeting will be focusing on answering some of the questions that came up in our meeting last time around data and measuring progress. So I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a great conversation today. So let's start with a roll call. And so we'll start, I guess, are there any members who are there virtually?
Richard.
Okay, so, all right, so we'll start in person, then we'll go over to the virtual folks. So
David Ingram.
Sean Sullivan. David Mays. Evan Foltz.
Catherine Mullen, Lindsay Halleck.
You're up, Richard.
Richard Smith, present.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the first thing that we need to do is we'll need to approve the minutes. So did everyone take a look at the minutes from last time? And were there any like issues with those or anything that anybody wanted to change? Well, I will make a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, everybody in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're going to move into the Soul Smart presentation. And so I'm going to hand this off to David, but essentially we have some visitors and they're from the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center. And they are going to review some of the findings that they have regarding where the city already is in meeting the eligibility of the Soul Smart program, and then talk to us a little bit about maybe next steps. So I will hand it over to you, David.
Great.
Good. Do you mind if I share your screen?
Please go ahead, Dave.
It says it's disabled.
Whoop, 1 second. Let me fix that.
Share screen.
See, how do I hand it off to you?
So arrow next to the green button you push.
Here we go. Let me see. Guess that. Does that help? Can you?
Yeah, that's better. All right, so I'm going to go through a few slides that just go over the SoulSmart program. And then we can also look at the SoulSmart scorecard that we've put together in order to show where we are now.
Hey, Dave, just a second.
Sure.
Yeah, we need to, I guess, make a motion to add in, or
I
how
don't
do
think we need to make a motion.
Okay.
Just need to- Yeah. BJ Klein? Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm late. All right.
Sorry, David, go ahead.
All right, thanks. So SoulSmart is a technical assistance and designation or recognition program that's supposed to kind of give an incentive or recognition for municipal governments that have policies that reduce the soft costs for residents and businesses to deploy solar energy, as well as some items about for direct support by the community of solar deployment. So overall, the program has worked with over 400 communities nationally. Us at NC State are an advisor. We've worked with a couple of cohorts in North Carolina and Virginia before, and then we have another one that we've been working with over the last few months, of which Wilmington is one of our communities. So there are 3 different levels of designation you can get, which correspond to different levels of kind of policy support. And so those are bronze, silver, and gold, which are ascending in stringency. So right now there are 11 SoulSmart designated communities in North Carolina. Most of these are in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill Triangle area. And there are 7 communities that have gold designation, 3 silver, and 1 bronze. That bronze one is the most recent one, which is Holly Springs. Then several more communities have already applied for designation in this most recent round of the program. We're hoping Wilmington will be one more. All right, so the criteria in SoulSmart, the way you get these designation levels is to complete credit items in each of these categories. Probably permitting, inspection, and planning and zoning are the ones where the prerequisites are, and probably where the most attention is overall. PR1 is a support letter, which you all have already submitted, so we're good there. And then there's a few special focus categories with this: government operations, community engagement, and market development, where you can pick up extra points to kind of like an elective selection. All right, so the SoulSmart program structure is kind of split up between the advisors and assistance providers, which is us, the Solar Foundation, and IREC, the Interstate Renewable Energy Council right now. And then a separate group runs the designation program, which is who actually reviews the applications. So that just ensures that everything is kind of separated out and not all being managed by one group. And here's the requirements for each of the designation levels. We've got bronze, silver, and gold. Bronze, you need some prerequisite items, 20 points in each of these 2 categories and 60 points overall. Silver has some training and 1 zoning prerequisite, and you need 100 points overall. And then gold is the most stringent, with you have to have a particular zoning language codified, as well as a 3-day permit turnaround time, as well as 200 total points across the board. Now they think there's over 700 points available, so these points levels aren't unachievable by any means, but it is gold is a substantial usually commitment, usually more for those prerequisites than for the points themselves. And then here's the kind of the process of going through SoulSmart designation. Right now, we are kind of in between 5 and 6. We're aiming to send in this application today to get our at least bronze designation, and then hopefully we'll have be able to publicize the successful designation soon. So yeah, this just goes through the bronze items in somewhat more detail. We've done this zoning memo, and Wilmington actually qualifies for the higher levels in the zoning credits because your zoning code is already pretty covers solar fairly well. We're working on getting this last one done. I think David has worked with me well enough to get that submitted today now. This one's been a little complicated because permitting is handled by New Hanover County rather than Wilmington directly. So hopefully we can get a little more information from NHC, but I think we're for where we need to get for bronze, we're good. And silver, to reach up to this, I think you're close to having the points for silver. It looked like we had 80 points completed already, and doing these permitting trainings would get you the additional points by themselves, and you have to do them anyway because to get the prerequisite items, and you already have this zoning item pre-completed. So since our contract only runs through March 31st, I don't know if you will be able to complete silver in the time that we have left, but the program will still be around, and I think it would be not too difficult to just go ahead and get silver within the very near future. These trainings are available through for free through the SoulSmart program. There's pre-recorded webinars. Yeah, just list your silver requirements. Then gold. So you'll need 200 total points for gold, and we think your zoning ordinance confirms this. But then the other requirement is this online statement confirming a 3-day turnaround time for small rooftop solar, which is something that would have to be coordinated with New Hanover County. All right, then this just goes a little bit over how the process of designation review will be done. This has been, for some of the other communities we worked with, this has been a pretty fast and fair process. If we've not seen any curveballs so far, so I think I'm optimistic about what we can get done here. They will provide some input on possible improvements to solar policies, which I think we've included some in the memo already. And they'll probably also be interested in looking at the noteworthy accomplishments to highlight for press releases. I thought personally your street sweeper facility project might be a good candidate for that. And then, yeah, the SoulSmart program will get in touch with you all to coordinate publicizing your designation, and we'll send you a plaque. The Clean Tech Center is also holding a recognition event for SoulSmart recognized communities at the State Energy Conference here in Raleigh on April 27th. So we would be very happy if you all could join us there in order to get recognized with the other North Carolina and possibly South Carolina communities. All right, here are just some resources on SoulSmart in general, if anyone's interested in that. So I will stop that share, and I guess we can go over to the scorecard. Sorry about that. Let's see, this is our SoulSmart scorecard that we'll be submitting for Wilmington to start the designation review process. Right now, we have all the bronze items completed and a total of 80 points that are ready for designation review. So that will let us get to bronze. In order to get to silver, we would need to get those additional training items done. And I believe that's it really. Yeah, because they're 10 points each. Oh, yeah, that's where we are. Does anyone have any questions on this?
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned those training items are just available online via that smart website. I know some of those trainings could be for our planning staff as opposed to the New Hanover County inspection.
So, yeah, the planning training is a points item in the planning and zoning category, but it's not a prerequisite. So that would be kind of bonus points if you could do the planning training. But we have to have to get silver, you do have to have those permitting trainings done. Definitely.
So that's a prerequisite for silver.
Yeah.
And that would mean collaborating more with the county staff.
Yes.
Okay.
And they're fairly, it's like, I think like around 3 hours webinars, and it's all pre-packaged, and you don't have to hire anybody to come in. It's just a free video.
And how do they document that that's been completed?
They just provide a memo on their own format that lists the employees that have completed it, the name of the training that was completed, and the titles, as well as the date of completion of those trainings. And I think that so far we haven't seen the reviewers be particularly nitpicky about who exactly has to have it done. It's kind of up to the discretion of the community. And obviously it probably can't just be one person unless that's the entire staff.
Yeah, that was my next question, is how many of their staff would have to do it?
That would,
More than one.
well, unless they only have one person. I know in some smaller county governments that can be the case for, but I would just say they should feel comfortable with who has it completed. Feel that the people for which this material is relevant have gone through it.
I have a question. Obviously with something like this, it kind of at some point is like a bureaucratic exercise in documenting and doing everything. But I was wondering, especially as you move through the different stages like bronze, silver, gold, how do you know if you're doing it like qualitatively well? You're meeting all the things that you need to meet to get the check marks to move from status to status, but like how do cities make sure that they are, or like what are indicators of success, let's say?
The SolSmart program had some research done on the impacts of SolSmart designation that were pretty impressive in terms of increased solar deployment. So that would be one indicator, is if the solar market is working well. We'll say some of these items, they're fairly forgiving in terms of allowing for some zoning rules, like for historic districts and such, and they tend to not prescribe particular policies in favor, and it's usually more about making sure that the policies are clear than mandating that a particular policy be in place other than those prerequisite items. So does that help at all? I can send you that research if you would like.
Yeah, that'd be great. I wouldn't mind looking at that. Did you have any, like, I don't know, were you interested, or were you planning on like following up, or do you know how many people like have solar panels right now versus like how many in a year or anything? Or
I don't think that there's no formal like, they don't check in and say we're going to revoke your designation if you've not performed to this level or anything like that. I'm sure we would be interested in following up and learning how it's going, but yeah, there's no like a check-in process or revocation.
Yeah, there have been some, I think, don't you guys have some information in regards to impacts to the solar business businesses in the communities that have pursued the Soul Smart designation.
Yeah, we do have, it wasn't done by us, but it was done by researchers who have looked at the program.
Right, yeah, I think that would be some useful information that this group would be interested in as well. Yeah, just impact to the business community, kind of, you know, the new jobs that it creates for an area, anything like that.
I guess I can stop the share now, and then I will pull that link up for you. You can send it over and pop it in the chat.
You can send it my way as well as put it in the chat here, and make sure everybody gets it.
Are there any other questions?
Can you kind of track it through going to this coast portal and see how many permits are being accepted? It's like a secret activity.
We did have a study that was done by North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association that kind of showed like, current solar deployment here in our area. I could share that information with you guys. It shows all the residential as well as commercial solar installations in Wilmington and New Hanover County. And you know, that's something we could, you know, do on a yearly basis, I suppose. I think they can update that study that they've done. So that would be an interesting way to track it.
Does the city currently have any solar?
We do. We've got some on some facilities down at the operations center. We have some on facility around South 17th Street, as well as at Miracle Field, if you know where that is.
Yeah.
Yep.
How does that play into the goals that we're moving towards? Is that measured and connected in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that goes towards the amount of renewable energy we currently have deployed in the city. So that's certainly going straight. One of the topics we'll talk about there is current clean energy for the city.
So one question on timeline. David mentioned that he said we don't have time to get to the silver while we're around, and the deadline was in April, and the program doesn't go away. But I'm wondering how that works. What does that mean?
Yeah, David, could you speak to the level of support that, and the time frame that you guys are providing?
So I'm sure we can help you all send in those last few items. I think the bigger question is the overall program administrator, because I think the Soul Smart program contract for the entire program, not just us, ends on March 31st, and the program is continuing for another 5 years, but we're not sure at this moment who the new administrator will be. And I don't really know what the time frame will be on when the new person or new organization, if it even is a new organization, will be back to reviewing applications. That being said, since it's such a small item, I would think if we could get it in by March 31st, that we could get that processed. And I don't think it'll be too long. You know, we've been told the program will very much still be around. And if it happens to be, even if we're no longer formally an advisor, we can definitely still make sure that training information gets to the right hands.
Yeah, just so it's clear for everybody, you're with the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center, and we're, you guys have been the support providers of this Soul Smart, which is a Department of Energy program. So that's kind of where
the organization that runs the program overall is the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, IRAC.
So essentially, the engineer is that we might not have time to apply for silver while they're still kind of advising us, but we can still do it on our own.
correct.
Yeah. And we would still help you get it in because we have followed this process.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, last piece is I don't see any objections here. I'm wondering if their timeline is impacting our activity.
No, I mean, I think, you know,
Or is there-
I think it's,
We don't have to do anything, we're already at problems. It's really a formality, right? We're already doing problems, we didn't even know we were doing, we're at problems. So the fifth item on the agenda today is to discuss whether or not this committee would recommend achieving a higher level designation.
Right.
And that's what we'll discuss.
Clear, yeah, I'm just a little discovery for that part of the discussion, just trying to understand what's pushing this, and I'm just trying to understand. So I think
Part of it is the fact that we've had some help. And we're trying to get this early on y'all's agenda. Unfortunately, it's running out, and so it is slightly pushed, but again, I know there's a opposition to get to keep achieving the silver designation, but that's for y'all's discussion.
Yeah, so in the consideration list, number 5 was participate in DOE's funded Soul Smart program. Doesn't say it had to be silver or gold or bronze. It was just participate, which sounds like we
Yeah.
at least minimally attained that objective.
I have a question that is not high level at all, it's very basic. What is the purpose behind the 3-day turnaround? I understand like being able to ask for, solar and get it quickly is probably beneficial, but the 3 days, is there a reason for that?
Like why it's 3 days opposed to anything else. I don't know why it's specifically 3-day, but I think it is just wanting to have a quick turnaround time for permits. Now that doesn't include I don't think that doesn't include the whole inspection schedule and anything like that. That's just when you submit an application, you get a response on it.
which what I think New Hanover County said that they do 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
Correct? And that
That
5 days is not meeting the requirements right now, so a little bit stringent there.
But well, is that them just acknowledging that they've received the permit? I mean, are they approving permits? I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah, did you hear that question, David?
No, I think it has to be approved or denied.
Received and,
Wow.
processed or whatever.
And 7 communities approved that. And that's what it sounded like from just really the first day.
Yeah, and across the country, hundreds.
Well, yeah.
But within North Carolina, I think there's currently 11, and there's actually from call I was on earlier today, I know there's several other cities that are submitting along with us.
There's a few more cities that are submitting with us, and then I think there are also some more that are submitting with other organizations. So it could be going up till well into the upper teens pretty soon.
So I think also just to kind of be clear from the agenda, so they've been kind enough to give us this presentation at the beginning. So we wanted to put it first so that they could kind of get in and out of our meeting without having to sit through the rest. But we will be, going through the rest of our meeting and then we'll be voting on this at the end after we get, kind of all the other information on the table as well. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear. That's kind of how it will work. We will vote at the end whether to approve David going for silver or higher.
Any final questions for the Soul Smart folks before we cut them loose? Okay, David, thanks very much for your time and joining us. Appreciate all your help through this process.
Thank you all for your interest in this, and we're glad to be able to get you all designation.
Great. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was again our first item, just kind of informational to make sure that we all just had a strong background on the Soul Smart program before we voted on the last item. But we also wanted to kind of make sure we followed up with some of the questions that came up during the last meeting and some communication since then. And so David and Dave are going to kind of continue that work on clarifying some of the issues that come up around like what's within our purview as a committee. What's our role and what things do we cover, what things do we not cover. It is kind of complicated in the sense where, you know, we're kind of coming in midstream. Some things have already, some goals have already been set, some things have already been done. So giving us a sense of, you know, where our advisory capacity lies. And then we'll talk about also how we're going to measure our work towards those goals. And this will just help clarify our mission, and also make sure that we're all using the common language as we move forward and we all know, you know, what we're working towards and what we're talking about. So I'm going to hand it off to David and Dave.
Great. Do you want to start off or you want to? We can tag team.
Old school life exercise.
Yeah, we arranged so we could kind of face the board this time.
So let's start with something that's unrelated to this committee, and it was actually started back in 2009. 2009, City Council passed a resolution establishing a goal for reducing greenhouse gas emissions from municipal operations, keeping with the principles of the U.S. Conference on Mayors and Climate Protection Initiative. So that was in 2009, and it basically established for greenhouse gas emissions a 58% reduction.
Richard, can you hear okay?
Goal by 2050. Right? So first of all, we need to know where we started. And that was identified in 2000. The baseline was 2007, and that was 9,708 metric tons of emissions. Right? So if you get all the way down to here, and this discussion, I'm not being math accurate here, I'm just using round numbers for our discussion. Right? We're going to get somewhere down to 4,500-ish. Okay? So that's the goal. This goal is all about, you can talk about it in quantity. How much do we burn, right? Because this is all about emissions. This goal right here, again, was passed in 2009. And it did not fall directly under purview of the Clean Energy Advisory Committee. It's already in existence. How do we measure this? Well, for a while, we weren't really paying much attention. Along came Mr. Ingram, and we found one of the first things that I had him do as sustainability project manager is find us a measuring stick. So the measuring stick is the ICLEI ClearPath tool.
Don't ask what ICLEI stands for.
Please don't, 'cause I don't know. But this is a subscription service that we are in the city now applies to, and it's basically an online tool that allows us to input all of our data associated with electricity and other emission sources, and it uses that data to calculate what our annual emissions amount has done. Dave's credit, he's actually been able to backtrack a few years from when we started this. I think we started this in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
We actually put some data going backwards from that to be able to track this. And the report that we went over at the last meeting includes some of the results of that. Okay? So here's our measuring stick for greenhouse gas emissions. Switching over to the recommendations that came from the ad hoc task force, there were really two real recommendations. One was related to fleet and our burning of fossil fuels to power our fleet, and the other is electricity, right? And the goals over here were broken down into two two date ranges, 2035 and then also 2050. And for fleet, what it says is that by 2035, we're going to electrify 50% of our fleet, right? So this is I think this is the number from the report that we presented last time. We have 666 pieces of equipment or vehicles within our fleet. So if we're getting to 50% right here, we're cutting that in half. And down here in 2050, the goal is 100% as technology allows. Right? We have some weird pieces of equipment, things that may not have necessarily technologically been advanced enough to actually switch them to electricity. So, but this is 100% with an asterisk. So that gets us to zero. We got zero fossil fuel burning vehicles. This is a pretty easy measuring stick to understand, right? It's not about the size of the vehicle. It's not about how much fuel it burns. It's simply saying number of vehicles cut in half, number of vehicles down to zero. That's our measuring stick. And here's the complicated one. The recommendation or the energy goals say that and again, we're using this 50% by 2035 and 100% by 2050 to transition to clean energy. Right? It doesn't say reduce the amount of energy that we're using. It doesn't say that at all. It simply says it needs to be clean. So this is all about source. Right? Where's the energy coming from? That was part of some of the questions that Ed was asked last time. So thankfully, we defined what clean energy means in our report. Clean energy is energy derived from renewable and zero emission sources, including solar, wind, hydropower, geothermal, biomass, and nuclear. All of those are defined in our original report as clean energy. Right? So it doesn't matter if our energy consumption goes up, it just means that the 50% share is a larger share, right? But certainly there's overlap, right? There's connection going back and forth between these two. Because if we become more efficient, if we're using things to burn less electricity, it's a lot easier to reach this goal. We're using 10 million kilowatt hours this year, and next year we're using 9 million kilowatt hours of electricity. That's 500,000 less kilowatt hours we have to worry about to get to this goal. So what's our measuring stick over here? We didn't come with an answer today. We came with this discussion for y'all to help decide so that y'all are comfortable with how we want to measure this. So there's three things over here. There are Evan asked, do we have solar already?
Could you read that out for the folks online?
Oh, our own renewable. We already have some renewable sources on three locations right now. So how does that factor in, right? That's already clean energy that we're generating ourselves. The second is renewable energy credits. RECs. So if we decided that we wanted to go out to the marketplace, contract with an independent vendor, and say we want to buy enough clean energy to offset a certain amount of our energy to help us achieve this goal, That's another option to consider. And the third is the Egret factor. And that David's going to explain that in just a minute. The Egret factor is a number that's tracked also in the Egret ClearPath tool. It helps us assess, based on the number of kilowatt hours that we burn every year, how much emissions does that mean? You know, and this is a regional number. It's highly researched at
EPA.
from EPA that really says in the region we exist in, the mix of energy that's being used to power the grid, what's the level of emissions that's being emitted as a result of that, right? What we've seen, Dave will show you the numbers, is that over time, even in the short time that we've been using this within the Egret ClearPath tool, it's on a steady downward trend, right? Less emissions. Duke Energy also has some goals themselves. 100% renewable energy by 2050. What is that going to do for us? Well, we don't know yet. But in my view, I wanted to put these three things out there for y'all to think about as we come up with the measuring stick for that part.
So in a sense, you know, I guess you could say, these are our tools that we can kind of use at different, you know, in different ways, you know, so more renewables, less RECs, more RECs, you know, less renewables, and then watching Duke, and we can use those tools, well, help guide David as he uses those tools to make sure that the city is meeting their goal.
I felt like during the last meeting, there's a lot of ideas and discussion going back and forth. These things overlap and they interrelate. These two are very clearly under y'all's purview. They are not disconnected from this, but we're not here directly related or talking about the quantity of emissions. It's certainly related, it's certainly important, and it can be included in the conversation. But these two are the more important measuring sticks for this committee. We got in this one, you guys here really have the say as to what this measuring stick needs to look like. Okay?
Really helpful. Thanks for that explanation. I'd just like to ask why the carbon piece is not, you know, in the purview of this discussion. I mean, I don't know if the email that I sent landed, but it seems to me that if you have commitments, clean energy is not going to touch emissions, but emissions touches clean energy. I'm wondering why we didn't go from the top down in that regard.
I think it was the charter of the original Clean Energy Task Force.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's clear. I'm just wondering why. There's an answer to that in some way.
I can try to find out, but I'm not sure I have that answer right.
Well,
Off the top of my head.
yeah, no, I hear you. Definitely not a test. And I would like an answer because if it's, I think it's important, you know?
How do you mean about clean energy isn't going to touch the emissions?
Well, if we make everything clean, it's not going to reduce our overall emissions necessarily.
Why?
Well, I think that's part of the discussion that we had last time. It's one of the factors. It's a tool of engaging carbon, but it's not the only one.
You also have to remember, energy efficiency is our number 4 item here, which is impact carbon.
No doubt.
Well, I think so. I guess and that might feed into the Egret conversation, which I think will help to give a clear idea of how clean energy does lead to the emissions piece. But I guess, and so that'll come next, but I guess I'm trying to understand your question. You're kind of wanting Dave to clarify why the emissions goal wasn't put under our purview, and like, I guess with the idea that how, is anyone making sure that that goal is being met?
I think that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It's like, who has the ball? If it's not us, then who is it? If we're not playing with that ball, it's like, it doesn't feel like a full conversation. It feels like it's a point, you can't avoid it on some level, right? It's really part of it. And I'm definitely not trying to push things that are established. I'm just trying to figure out, a lot of the work that I've done is within arenas where opportunities were missed, right? And so that's where the nature of the questioning is coming from. It's like, why wouldn't the tent be larger? It doesn't, I don't know. For me, it's all connected and should be discussed and coherent in regards to the strategy we develop. But if it's not part of our purview, then it's not. I'm just trying to understand that.
So I had this conversation we had with the Energy Committee, originally the task force, because the city of Wilmington could say, we're not going to reduce any of our energy load. We're not going to put any solar panels up. We're going to take the number that Duke Energy gives us in emissions and offset that by buying a REC system. You've made no environmental impact, and if one could argue you've actually done worse because you cleared land, put solar panels up, or bought clean energy. You've actually done nothing to improve the environment. So when you tie it back to greenhouse gas, like you're asking, you have to do the energy efficiency and things like that to get your energy usage down, which also you have less embedded carbon in your total analysis. So I think they are interlinked. It's just that piece has never been bought in, and the city can just go buy RECs and say we're 100% renewable.
Well, I guess, I mean, that's with our purview to say no, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's-
That's why I've argued since day one, energy efficiency has to be part of the solution.
Well, David, could you maybe share then, because I think that those are good questions, and I know you don't know the full answer why. But I mean, greenhouse gas emissions fall under you, right? That's under your job capacity. So you report to the city council, I guess, on meeting that goal, or how can you talk about who do you report to then on emissions?
Yeah, absolutely. We gave city council an update on greenhouse gas emissions earlier this year. And, you know, absolutely energy efficiency is part of our means of attacking that. So, you know, we've got a budget that we can use each year to pursue energy efficiency. There's also some additional capital funding that goes towards bigger projects. We've done things like replacing chillers over here at Daly Hall, some chillers and new HVAC systems over at our fire headquarters. So there are always a number of projects undergoing where we're targeting energy efficiency. That's certainly our preference, is to drive down, make our buildings as efficient as possible, as opposed to, you know, having to go out and buy RECs. And, you know, that's absolutely one of the areas that this group, I want to, you know, for you guys to be able to focus on is that something that we should do, buy RECs? You know, what if we put, you know, renewable energy on top of every single facility that we can, and we're still not going to be able to meet our goals with purchasing RECs be okay? Or
yes. So you can, if you once you get your base load to where you no longer you have more load than you have renewable energy, you're still buying from the utility. So also that your only option is really buy RECs. But our job could be buy RECs and we're done, not do anything. That just doesn't feel like the right thing.
No, I agree.
No, yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm glad to hear all the
Right, but that's
because
the
I was concerned. Well, no, I think our job is to do all that research and to help David as he does that research in carefully evaluating all of the options. And because we're always going to have some energy, right? You can't energy efficiency yourself to zero energy. And I think the question is, yeah, exactly. What do we do then, knowing that that's the true dilemma? And like I said, I mean, I think it's helpful, or I hope it's been helpful that, you know, it's not just an issue that's floating out. It's, you know, our person here who's also doing this but for some reason it's just not under our purview, and I think those are valid questions, but I don't feel like it's just a goal that got thrown in the trash and it's not being addressed. I think that's a big part of David's job probably, but it's just not under our advisory capacity.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
On the record, I totally agree. I mean, I think the policy of how you would approach it should never be to go to Rex and be done with it. It should be committed to what you can do, and then, so totally agree with that. And
Pressure, kind of like last resort.
yeah, absolutely, totally agree with that. And it's complex. I appreciate the opportunity just to dig a little bit deeper. I was not involved in the task force, so just context for how these decisions were made. So I feel so.
No, it was
But our work directly impacts can impact David's goals of greenhouse gas.
yes.
Right? We are implementing or instituting energy efficiency projects, or all the new buildings that we're gonna build have to be LEED certified. And the old buildings are demolished, and the new building goes up. That's energy efficiency. So.
Well, probably, I know that this is true in North Carolina. I can't remember, sorry, forgive me. I've looked at a few emissions inventories since we looked, but I know in North Carolina right now, the biggest emissions sector is transportation. So like our work in electrifying vehicles and like coming up with a fleet policy will also be directly related to David meeting his greenhouse gas goals.
Yeah, our fleet represents over 60% of our emissions, so, yeah.
For the city.
Yeah, for the city.
And does the fleet grow with time? You kind of threw up two numbers, but
That was as of today.
so that's not in the future.
That was 661 in 2020.
I'm sorry, you become my phone.
Because you talked to the house, right?
I think the question was, has the fleet traditionally grown with time?
What's the European
Does that
growth?
change is the one thing?
Yeah, it does. So, I mean, to me, it's 50%. I mean,
Yeah.
in 2035, if our fleet is now 800,
Right.
then we gotta have 400 of those as electric. That's following the math of what was said, but yeah, that's a moving target.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if you were putting out numbers to indicate that's what we have to be 333. So here's just saying 50%.
So by 2034, you better be at 55%. You're probably going to fall.
And luckily, like with the market, it will become actually, I think, increasingly difficult to get the internal combustion engines for some of the easier vehicles, like some of the passenger vehicles and things like that. So the market will help out, but.
And I'll note that when we wrote that, it was so that the way that vehicles are replaced could be assessed and money could be reserved in a way that electric vehicles could be purchased, which takes a little bit of time, but also it's just as horrible to get rid of a new vehicle just because it exists and to let it live out its life, So that's why it is like not the most aggressive goal, because it's more policy driven, I suppose.
They have asset price. You want to appreciate this
Right,
economically as possible.
exactly.
So just a quick question for David. I think this came up last time, but I was hoping for clarity. If we're creating electricity, that is producing direct emissions. Do we follow that electricity where it comes from? How does that piece work?
Yeah, and I think when we look at the Egret numbers, that will help as well. Yeah, absolutely where that electricity is coming from makes a difference. I mean, as you see, the grid each year is getting cleaner and cleaner. So significantly less coal, energy coming from coal now. You'll see the downward trend in that over the last decade. So yeah, we're how that electricity is being produced is a big component. Absolutely.
Good to know.
And then also, and like I think you mentioned, so like there's the direct, like the tailpipe emissions, and then the kind of indirect emissions that come from buying. Now we have to buy electricity from Duke where we didn't before because we were buying it from Amoco or whatever. And so like David said, that is the biggest part of why we wanted to go over the Egret numbers. But as far as goals go, then I guess one other thing I wanted to mention, which was So, looking at this, moving forward as we talk about fleet policy, clean energy policy, the other kind of goal that was under that, and the reason why the Soul Smart program falls under our purview, is that there was also a community-wide goal, which was really about, these two numbers are really about city operations, right? We're not trying to reduce the fleet of any other organization in town except for the city. Clean energy is all about city operations only. But the committee did set, or the task force did set a community-wide goal about kind of doing, like the city doing its part to help foster a clean energy transition within the community as well. And so that's why we talked about the Soul Smart program today, and we saw that as part of being, meeting part of this community-wide goal. So, that's why, for example, we're allowed to vote on recommending this, because there was a community-wide goal that was placed. So we wanted to also.
Do you remember what their community-wide goal was?
Yeah, I've got it.
It's right here on the screen.
Yeah, okay.
It's more qualitative,
Yeah.
quantitative, but yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a, thou shalt have X number by law.
No, yeah, but absolutely anything that we can do that influences the private sector and the community as a whole is another important area for us to focus on. Even though we can't, lay out specific, like you said, X, Y goals.
Yeah.
Whatever we can do to
Foster.
set a good example, make it easier.
Educate.
Streamline processes. So
are there any more questions kind of on this piece, which is mainly about, what kind of topics fall under our purview and our advisory capacity before David goes into talking about how we know where the electricity we're buying comes from?
I had a quick question on the greenhouse gas piece. Is that just scope 1, scope 2? Or is that?
yeah, very limited scope 3s in there for harvesting. Perhaps not today, but at some point, perhaps we can dive deeper into the greenhouse gas emissions component. Again, as kind of from a baseline that was established kind of before Dave and I were working on it. But,
I think it's a good idea in the sense where, as we're evaluating how we want to meet our clean energy goals, it would be nice to know also, okay, if we go this route, what are the emissions to make sure that we're helping our goal, but then helping you meet your goal as well.
And that's a cool thing about the ICLEI tool. You can actually input various different scenarios to see how it will impact greenhouse gas emissions. Like if we get our fleet reduced by 20% or 30% of EVs, what will be the impact on emissions? So all kinds of cool forecasting tools in there.
Well, thank you, Dave. I know it was really helpful for me when we were agenda setting. I'd like to have it kind of there and clear, and I hope that's helpful for everyone else as well. Okay, so the next item is going to be about Egret Data, which, as we said before, that's how people in the clean energy space, well, I guess in all the energy space, but mostly in the clean energy space, that's how you know when you're buying electricity. This is the information that people use to understand how much of the electricity they're purchasing is generated with fossil fuels, and how much of it is generated with more renewable sources. And as Dave alluded to, this is EPA data, and I think it's updated annually, isn't it?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. So it's updated every 2 years. So it is done regionally, and so David's going to kind of walk us through what the data looks like, where it comes from, and then also kind of what the state of our Egret region is right now.
Yes, sorry, this is a little bit small up there, but this
And the
is.
other state,
Yeah, Richard, can you see it on, I think I shared it on the screen. Can you see the Egret summary table?
Yeah, I can, and I have it pulled up on my screen as well. Thank you.
Awesome, appreciate it. So this data just came out in January of this year. Of course, it's showing back in time a little bit. So this is the Egret table for 2020. This is the area, the SRDC, that's the Egret region that we're in. It includes the Carolinas and Virginia. So that's kind of the region, as opposed to looking at just North Carolina. If the grid goes down here, they pull energy from throughout the region, not just from our local area. So that's kind of the thinking behind using regional numbers as opposed to, more North Carolina or even just Wilmington specific numbers. And here are those subregions broken out by the various, these are pretty much the gases that we're looking at over here, the ones that make up CO2 equivalent emissions. And as you can see down here, these are basically the emission factors that we input into the ICLEI tool to calculate our greenhouse gas emissions. So they give you a number for each of these individual gases, and that's what's used to calculate your CO2 equivalents, which is made up of these multiple gases. And also within Egret, they show you, sorry, that's the North Carolina specific table. Oh, here we go. So
Zoom in just a little bit, sorry.
Zoom in?
Yes, please.
Let's see. So this is the various components that make up the grid, where, Evan, you were asking where the electricity comes from, what sources generate that electricity. So this is how it's broken up in our region. 12.6% comes from coal-fired power plants. Diesel or oil account for 0.1%. Gas is natural gas is the one area that Duke Energy in particular has been increasing quite a bit of, and you can see that one's kind of gone up here in the last year or so. And then the clean and or renewables are all on this side, so you can see how much each of those various components make up of the electricity grid.
And I guess to clarify, so these are sources owned by Duke. So I don't believe.
No,
Not necessarily.
Same thing with the service territory. So when you get to Virginia, you got
Dominion.
you got IPPs.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said.
PGM.
I should say like they're owned by utilities. I don't believe. I mean, we're probably not even that high up into like penetration, but did that solar include like net exports from any like PV or privately owned assets?
It's a good question. I think if it's going into the grid, yeah, that
They're treating it as like an
If they're selling into a non-regulated market like PGM, they're selling into the grid, it should. But if you have net metering, if you're an industrial or commercial or residential with net metering, I don't know that answer.
That's what I was wondering, like the leftover, whatever the house doesn't use, I wonder if they treat it. It's probably not a big.
But if you're a solar field and you're selling into the grid, yes.
Then yeah.
You don't have to be a utility.
Right.
It's a good question.
Yeah, IPP.
I'll ask my Duke contact that.
Yeah.
Question, that'd be a good one to know. I'm not sure on that. Like if it's all the residential solar here in Wilmington, is that being part of our regional mix?
I know we have at our facility on 17th Street, we have a net directional mix of
Yes, net metering.
net meter.
But I don't know if that counts in this number or not.
Right, I do know that there's a 12-month cycle where we get credit for anything we're pushing out. So I would think that they would give us, I would think they would be here, but I don't know the answer to that either.
The point is like also how much clean energy we already have in that region. It's pretty close to our goal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good point. If you add up all these numbers across here, I mean, you have 48.4%. clean energy. That being said, while our goal is 50% clean energy, A, that doesn't mean we, can't surpass that, blow that away in some way. B, that doesn't mean we can't pursue more sources of truly renewable energy.
Is nuclear included in that?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just didn't highlight it.
Yeah, sorry. I did have.
Do we know what our number currently is? Goal oriented.
This comes from this.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, that's what we just said. What is that, 48.3 you said?
48, 48.
So it's safe to say Wilmington is already at 48.3. Is that an accurate statement?
Of,
Regionally, I mean, all these wires connect, right? So
Well, regional, just cut to it. I totally get that. I'm not supposed to Wilmington. Because this is regional.
yeah, so yeah,
we don't have a, it is not a granular, more granular detail. This is like the common.
So is the goal to get to that detail, or are we using this as the metric? How does that work?
That's part of what.
That's the discussion, right? That's
It's a matter of
the metrics. Again, we've got 3 facilities right now that have our own renewable sources on them. Operations Center, Field, 17th Street. Those are already 100% clean energy, at least for those little spots.
yeah, that's a problem.
Egret Factor is next. I mean, this is information for y'all to digest in order to help us determine what our measuring scale should be.
I guess I'm wondering if we could ask Duke for like a real-time snapshot of what the city of Wilmington is fed by.
Yeah, I guess I'm just absolutely accomplish what we're talking about trying to do. Using that information, and it's not specific to us. It seems to me we need to rely on that information. And in other words, we're beholden to that information. And if our efforts are factored into all the wires crossing, how do we measure the impact of that significant outlay that we made building new solar facilities?
So this is just one variable.
What's up?
This is just one variable of that equation. So we as in the city use X number of kWh in a given year. Some of that kWh is delivered by on-site solar. Whatever isn't utilized, then we have to purchase from Duke Energy. Then this is the best information we can get. So, X is what we produce on site, and Y is what we buy from a regional source, right? And that's how you would calculate what is with the resources available. That's the best or closest we can get to knowing what the actual is.
So this, just to connect to, I think Dave, you're making a point, the discussion is around how to do that. We don't have a process to do that yet. Is that correct?
To me, I think, as I said before, that part of it is the most complicated. But I also think it's the most important for this group, this committee, these people, to come to a mutual understanding and agreement of how to measure that going forward.
That's really helpful in terms of objectives. So I didn't know that question could be answered, which is why I asked it. If it can, it's not a problem, it's complicated, right? But now I'm clear that we don't have an established process. Part of our objective is to establish that process, maybe along the line of what you're suggesting right there.
We didn't end up at the end of the task force with a specific formula, right? We didn't write out a formula that says, well, this is how you're gonna measure it.
Got it.
So I think I heard it loud and clear last meeting. That's what y'all want. We need to be able to do that in order to see how we're progressing. So I think that's important. We didn't come here with an answer for you. We came here with information. Let's mull over it and run through it and figure out something that makes sense. And it's meaningful. It's got to be impactful, right?
So make things even more complicated. These numbers that are going to change every year or every 2 years are also also tied to Duke Energy's commitments they've made to their shareholders. And how do you extrapolate this to where they are, where we want to be? That becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
Do you mean how do you start to impact the Egret number?
Yeah, so Duke Energy is a large portion of this.
Right.
They have a goal to hit. Now, I know this is crazy, it's not plausible, but Duke Energy can do all they want, and Dominion can go and slap on a whole bunch of coal plants, and it goes into this regional number, and it's the opposite effect. And so, we're tied to this for the Egret number. This is the best tool that's available in public domain. I don't think we could say, hey, we're going to use Duke Energy's number instead, but it gets us a little bit closer. Duke Energy publishes a North Carolina.
Do you not think that would be better? I don't know.
What other communities do?
I'm sorry?
What other communities do with this bill?
I don't know.
Yeah, that would.
Should ask.
It's, colleagues that I talk to around the state, we talk about fun stuff like Egret emission factors all the time. And it's like I think we've all agreed across the state to kind of use these regional factors when we're calculating our individual cities, as opposed to the city calculates it using just North Carolina, or Asheville calculates it in a different way.
What's the end of this conversation? Is it we're going to rely on the EPA numbers, or are we talking about coming up with a way of calculating it? Is that what we're just?
No, I think the accepted way to calculate greenhouse gas emissions anyway is to use the EPA Egret numbers.
So to put a situational reality on it, we're going to go making investments in our clean energy grid in the hopes that this number changes that's connected to everyone else. And that's not really acceptable, but maybe it has to be acceptable, right? So I guess I'm wondering about the ambition, maybe to everybody else. Are we trying to figure out a new way of doing it, or are we just going to say that number drops?
Well, I'll say that those Egret numbers, and I'll pull up something else in a minute that shows you that the grid is getting cleaner. Not only here, but across the country, the grids tend to be getting cleaner as renewable energy becomes more affordable, and it's making a better business case. Another one of our goals in there is to advocate at the state, federal level for clean energy infrastructure. That's another one of the 10 recommended goals. So kind of behind the scenes, there's a lot of work going on. I mean, Duke right now has a new carbon plan that they're working on that they have to submit to the Utilities Commission. Lindsay can Lindsay can speak to kind of a lot of the behind the scenes pressure that Duke is getting from a variety of fronts to clean up their grid even quicker than their initial plans have suggested.
Well, I just think that there are two parts to this, and they both need to be measured. And one is how Wilmington's clean energy is interconnected with the Duke profile, and then how Wilmington's kilowatt hours of clean energy based on its total kilowatt hours. So looking at both of them over time will give you a more clear picture of the impact made than just one or the other.
Right.
So the question that I have is, are we going to, not to make things more complicated, but are we going to look at, as the goal is stated, 50% of clean energy by, 20 whatever, are we going to look at 50% of that current year of 2035? We need 50% of the usage that we use in 2035 to be clean, or are we going off of a benchmark like 50% of the energy that we used compared with 2021? So there's a difference, because if we're benchmarking, then we're taking into account like use avoidance, Whereas if we're looking at just whatever the current year is energy mix, that's more of a moving target. So that, as we're sitting here having the conversation about how are we going to define the measuring stick, that's my question is, are we going off of a benchmark or are we going off of a dynamic current rolling year number?
Well, fleet, we were dynamic.
Yeah. I think we've always looked at it as dynamic.
I know fleet, we definitely did, but I don't know about the latter.
It ties to Kat's point of the second variable of total kilowatt hours and the amount that we're using. I'm assuming we can measure our total kilowatt hours. Why is it not that simple? Just to say 50% of the total, like the fleet, right? Like, why is that oversimplifying?
And Robert, sorry, I just want to get back to Robert before we go into that. Robert, was your question, is our clean energy goal
Dynamic or static?
benchmarked? Yeah, so the greenhouse gas emissions goal is benchmarked. We have to reduce from a certain year by.
I understand. That's my question. Is, are we doing is the Clean Energy Commission doing the same thing, or are we going to be going dynamically, whatever the current at each target year, that's what we're comparing with? Like in 2035, if our goal is 50% clean energy, we're looking at the total kWh used in 2035, and we need 50% of that to come from clean sources.
Yes, that's how the goal is written. Yeah.
So that's clear. So as far as total kilowatt hours and then the amount, do we have a number on that? It'd be interesting to know what that number is. We can measure it.
Yeah, we track our annual usage each year. So yeah, it would be 50% of that.
So what's our current status?
Yeah, I mean, it fluctuates each year, so I'd say between 10 and 12 million kilowatt hours.
So back to what I said earlier, 10 and 12 million. I'm just making this up as we go, but say 1 million of that was self-generated. That means the rest we bought from Duke Energy, which is this number.
Right. That's the really.
That's how you get the carbon emissions.
I just got lost.
Okay. No, so if we bought 11 million kilowatt hours in a given year, and 1 million of that was self-generated, what's left over is 10 million kilowatt hours. You multiply it by the Egret factor, and that's what gives you your carbon emissions.
Right, but that's not part of our goal. So I guess the question I think is that, I think what Evan's getting to is that, okay, so let's say it's a nice clean month. Yeah, we're producing 10 million. We buy a bunch of solar panels and we get up to we produce 5 million of our own with the solar panels. The leftover is we need to be 50% of that comes from a clean energy source. So that's going to be separate from the emissions factor. So I think what you're getting to is, if we can measure that, why not? Yeah. And I guess one thing I know that this, I guess, David, because I know we're getting close to time and we still need to vote on the soul smart. So I think the reason we brought this on the agenda was to kind of have this conversation and make sure that we were all learning to speak the same language and use the same sort of dictionary, and not to solve the problem of how we're going to do it. So I guess, when it comes to next steps, now that we've kind of talked about the terminology, it seems like we do kind of want to keep going on these measuring sticks and really dig into what maybe some alternatives to the Egret data are for measuring clean energy, since we're not looking over the emissions data.
But Evan's asking, where are we today? And the answer is we can get it. Because we have the Egret factor and we know what we're producing already on site.
Yeah,
And the Egret factor is still separate because that's emissions. We need this number here, right, which is the resource mix percentage. We don't need it. Right. For our work, we don't need it.
I actually say it's a percentage of what you use.
Would
Multiply
be
by those
interesting
numbers.
to see where Duke
With the other.
compared with this Stark, Virginia, Carolina, just
We were the dirtiest.
There you go.
Yeah.
We're the dirtiest.
So there's North Carolina highlighted on top and Virginia highlighted below, and so I can.
There's states that are a lot worse than we are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but states that are a lot better too.
But then
Yeah.
also, Wilmington is definitely cleaner than the state overall, because we're not in mountains.
Well, and because they count nuclear into it, so depending on how you feel about nuclear, it's a,
But for this committee,
Yeah.
it's for the standards right here.
South Carolina's right there.
Can you maybe read them out for those of us who need glasses?
I was thinking more like percentage wise, like how much nuclears do.
Yeah,
That's in their IRB.
Yeah, just to compare, make sure it's.
I didn't pull the resource mix from each of those states, but they would be, yeah.
Well, in this region, it was 39% nuclear.
But that's a good, does not go all the way to DC or something. I'm looking at that first.
I don't think it goes,
Goes up to Virginia and parts of, I think, part of West Virginia.
Yeah. Anyways, I was just thinking Duke's more local.
I mean, Duke goes
No,
all
I'm
the
sure
way.
the city buys, if we buy electricity, we buy it from Duke, right? There's no other vendor that we're allowed to purchase from.
So I think what one of the asks that I heard was, can we get a break at 12-year, maybe the full year 2021? What was our KWH and how much did we actually produce on site? So we could at least have an over, 10,000 foot overview.
How much did we produce versus how much did we have to buy?
Total KWH, how much we produced, or how much we bought, vice versa. It's going to be a remainder calculation.
How does what we buy impact? Not tracking that.
So what we buy from Duke Energy has this emissions factor, which can tell us what our,
And that resource mix.
it'll give you where we are on that target now.
That's somehow when the emissions create an active law.
No, the emissions aren't related, actually, to our, they're related, but to our goal, we're gonna
The clean
look
energy
at,
part.
we're gonna look at the resource mix.
The clean energy part, just the clean energy
Yeah.
part.
So we're saying, okay, we can produce 50, let's say,
It is like 40.
how Duke fuels its grid.
Okay, so I think, so let's see if I can try what you're saying. When we buy from Duke Energy, part of that energy that we receive is clean energy.
Yes. Yeah, perfect, yeah.
I understand.
And
Yes.
and increasingly so, because Duke is being forced through the regulatory process to start putting more renewables on the grid. Yeah,
Very,
Yeah.
along those lines.
Yeah, Evan,
Yeah.
so here's how all of Duke or this region, the electricity comes from these various
Yeah,
mixes
so
of energy.
clearly The mix of what they're using impacts our ability to claim.
Correct.
I can see that directly. One more step within the total kilowatt hours and what we're currently at, which is somewhere around 20%. I'd be curious to know how that number can be impacted. For example, like the solar, developments, and I'm not sure the specifics of that, but is it a solar field? Is it like a field with solar panels capturing energy? Is that what we're doing? I'm just not aware.
For us,
Yeah, for Wilmington, did we spend a lot of money on developing?
well, what we've done is been on top of the roof,
Yes.
Okay.
specific buildings.
So I don't know the best way to do it, and maybe too big of an ask and not possible, but it would be interesting to understand I maybe get ahead of the game too, but just to say what options are at hand and how those options can impact that number. Like if we go, make a park into a solar field, does it even make it then, or is it 10%?
Depends on how big that park is. Yeah.
Well, totally.
Yeah.
But you see what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. And, some of that depends on some of the programs that are going to be offered, again, kind of through Duke. I mean, they had a previous program that cities like Charlotte took advantage called the Green Source Advantage Program, where they developed, I guess they're still in the process of developing a large offsite solar farm. I mean, I think it was, 30, 40 miles or so outside of Charlotte. 100% of that energy that farm was going to be producing was contracted to go to Charlotte. So
if we did something like that,
if we,
it worked for me to get to that point, but just plant the seed.
yeah, I mean, let's just look at easy numbers. So say 25%, say if we develop some, large scale solar offsite somewhere, outside of Wilmington, and it produces 25% of our energy that we need. So that 25% of the pie, of the total pie, that 25% is 100% renewable energy. So that would reduce it would increase the amount of energy we're getting from renewable sources as opposed to strictly from this mix. So.
Well, and I'm gonna guard off our time, because we have
Yes.
5 minutes left to make something, but I'm sorry. I promised I would.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
me too. And so I think, I guess quickly.
Let me make just one more
Oh,
point. So if you think about this, because I think this discussion's got to happen again in more detail, perhaps the next meeting or two. Two other points to make. First of all, I think the discussion around energy efficiency is extremely important when it comes to this. Obviously, the smaller the number, the easier it is to hit those goals. Secondly, we're not getting smaller. Wilmington continues to grow. And as we grow, we have to continue to serve citizens. So think about that in terms of the number of trash trucks, the number of police cars, the number of maintenance staff, the number of parks that we have to build and maintain. It's a challenge. So just putting that out there, it'll be something that we have to wrestle with as we go through the actions of this. Thank you.
And that all ties back to greenhouse gases. As we hear clean energy, that's kind of the link. I get where you're coming from. It's hard.
All right, so that was a good conversation. We'll work on some, like, I've taken notes and we will work on some items to bring to the next agenda to kind of keep us moving forward. But David, let's see, we need to take a vote on, we need to vote whether or not we want to recommend submitting the current scorecard items for bronze Soul Smart designation. That's the first vote. So do we want to submit and get the bronze designation? And then the second vote is, do we want to recommend a continued effort to pursue silver or higher Soul Smart designation?
You don't have to vote twice.
Oh, we don't?
You don't have to. If y'all all agree on what you can just have one vote.
Okay.
All right, so I'll move to approve the submission of current scorecard items for bronze Soul Smart designation and continued effort to pursue a higher designation.
Is there a second on voting to recommend both?
Second.
Everyone in favor say aye?
We got to do a roll call.
Hold
Oh,
for
sorry.
discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Ask for discussion.
Is there a discussion? What about on Zoom?
No, I'm good.
You're gonna have to. Right?
For the solar piece.
Yeah, I mean, so that's.
Yeah, there's no cost impacts here other than staff time. It's
not saying we are going to get silver, it says we're going to for sure.
Yeah, I would suggest that y'all consider including a time frame associated with the hire.
I'll add to.
We don't know who the organization is going to be. That makes it a little bit more difficult.
Also don't underline this.
It doesn't have to be next week. It can be a year.
By the end of the calendar year.
It's arbitrary.
Pat, do you want to revise your motion to include a?
Yeah, I revise my motion to include by the end of the calendar year for the continued effort to pursue a higher designation.
I say,
Are there any issues with that or anything anybody else wants to discuss?
we got to do a roll call.
Yep.
I don't vote, so.
Okay, we're gonna start the vote. So we'll go to Zoom last. Okay, Evan, you want to start?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Richard's the only one who's done.
Aye.
Oh, Richard, did I say that?
He did that.
Sorry, Richard. The other guy, Howard. Okay, so the motion passes.
ayes have it.
Okay. So if there's nothing else, we can adjourn the meeting. I don't think we have to go to adjourn, right? No. Sweet. Okay. Thank you, guys.
This was.
Oh, yeah.
You need a gavel. I think you get your gavel.
With my super clean and environmentally friendly lunch.
So we finished item 5 out of 10 on our list.
Check them all.
Check them one at a time. 3 out of 5 are done.
And, you know, I threw this up on screen too. It just kind of shows you how the Egret over since 2014, how much cleaner the grid is getting. I mean, you see coal is down 60% since 2015. Oil's down as far as, you know, the amount that's used to generate electricity. Oil's down, what's that, 83%. Natural gas is where Duke is trying to replace all of the coal plants with natural gas fired plants, which is a little bit cleaner, but we're definitely trying to push for more renewables. It's up 87%.
And one big factor on that, just like since we're off of the time here, but with the carbon plan, the legislation that requires Duke to reduce their carbon dioxide emissions, not their greenhouse gas emissions. And so Duke's holding it up like, you know, they're going to be doing this great thing, which, okay, yeah, I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's a big loophole essentially. So the big fight over the carbon plan this year is going to be over natural gas, because natural gas mostly impacts methane, not carbon dioxide. And so they're really trying to like kind of use that loophole to increase gas and not other renewables. And so that'll be like the major advocacy fight.
And it's only scope 1. That was one of the big discussions.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Carbon plan was, well, what about your suppliers?
Right.
Right, if anything, it's only in the state too, so.
It's only in the state, they can push it off to South Carolina.
Oh yeah, we're going to build it in South Carolina, so it's not going to affect you guys.
Because with natural gas, a lot of emissions also come from the source of renewable emissions, so.
951.
Pipe-
It's Duke, it's still Duke.
Pipeline leaks.
Yeah. Just remember that
South Carolina.
Are we recording?
I can shut it down.
Shared resources.
I get
They were
people.
big
Yeah.